I'd actually love to bring in our next guest. Yes. I mean, I know that this is not what you're here initially to talk about, but I think it's interesting to get your opinion. Shaukat Aziz is with us, former Prime Minister of Pakistan, and we have a book that we're going to talk about as well. Sure. But I always find this ironic. The Americans are out around the world trying to put together multilateral trade agreements at this point. We have a WTO process which allows you to take transgressors for dumping to the WTO, and yet America is here unilaterally imposing steel price controls. Is that the appropriate answer from a country that is seeking international agreement for TTP and other trade agreements around the world?
Well, unilateral imposition of duties is not restricted under WTO rules. Countries can act if they feel there is some improper dumping and other things going on. I think we have to be a bit more open on trade. Free trade is the catalyst for growth in the world. The moment we have more interference coming in, it disturbs the markets.
But isn't there an element of hypocrisy about this? You want to get the world to subscribe to international trade agreements on your terms, and yet you still proceed with unilateral sanctions against Chinese steel providers?
I would call it overbearance of domestic pressures and political pressures which cause any government to do what they have done. It may not be strictly economic. So WTO being strictly economic does not capture some of the other geopolitical and other factors which come into a decision. This decision is, in my view, largely directed at the domestic audience and the domestic market.
The only thing I'll say about WTO case, and my understanding of these things, they can take a long time, months, years. Now, if you are feeling that a domestic industry is in clear and present danger of collapsing under the weight of imports, then maybe you need to move in a more timely fashion. I think the WTO can, I mean, by all means I disagree, but I think the WTO, although it has a great role, can be a very lengthy, long-running process open to appeal on both sides.
That is true. At the same time, whatever action any government takes must not impede the competitiveness of their industry. The problem when you have too many tariff protections and barriers created against imports is you could move into an inefficient industry, which then makes it very difficult to get out of.
But we should just point out this hasn't happened in isolation. I mean, US steelmakers have already levied a case against 40 Chinese manufacturers of steel. So there is a twin-track process going on here where they are taking legal action, but at the same time they're not waiting around for answers. They're just hiking the tariffs.
The UK, I mean, you've got an industry which is, dare I say it, collapsing by the day unless it gets some support or new injection of capital or new commitments from long-term owners, and the UK response mirror opposite, it seems, from what the United States has done.
To cut them loose here at Port Talbot, I think it's a very interesting message if the US steelmakers feel the conditions have been that strenuous, that onerous, that they need intervention by the state. It does send a message to David Cameron again. Well, let's close off on this conversation, talk about Pakistan specifically, because eyebrows have been raised in the States after Pakistan's army chief visited Beijing earlier this week. The visit comes hot on the heels of a Pentagon warning that China is looking to set up a naval base in Pakistan, causing unease in neighbouring India as well as in Washington. I spoke to Pakistan's finance minister at the Asia Development Bank meeting earlier this month and asked about relations with China, in particular the Pacific Corridor, currently under construction.
We have a lot of interest globally for the foreign direct investment in Pakistan. It has begun with China, $46 billion investment, mostly in energy sector. Out of 35 billion is going to be in energy sector. Pakistan economy has shown great resilience and against the global trend of the developing countries and the emerging markets, which has slowed down and negative decline. For the last 5 consecutive years, we have shown 7-year high growth in the last fiscal year, and the current year we hope to cross 5%. We are aiming at a growth rate of 7% in the next 2 fiscal years. So things are moving quite nice.
Ishaq Dar there, a man that Shaukat Aziz, the former Prime Minister of Pakistan, knows very well. Let me ask you about the China relationship, because what's being constructed now is this massive railroad project that goes from Western China the whole way through Pakistan to a port, a very key infrastructure for China to avoid the current maritime sea routes to get product into the Middle East and also into Europe. So to actually go forward with this project, they need China because of the security implications. I think it's 15,000 special security forces on the ground to protect this investment. What does that mean for relations across the region, given a closer relationship with China?
I think we must look at the One Belt, One Road initiative as a real game changer for the region. The geopolitical aspect of it, or the security aspect of it, was not what drove it. What drove it is to provide linkages and connectivity between various parts of Asia. In this case, between China coming all the way to Pakistan. We do have a land border with China. We have a highway which is there, which needs to be improved to take better traffic and trucks, and build connectivity. Whenever you build connectivity, you create economic activity, you cooperate, you collaborate, and this includes roads, this includes railways, this includes digital highways, because people have to talk to each other. So all this is part of a plan where this connectivity will create tremendous economic activity, because when you build a road or a highway through an area where there is none, you create economic activity, you create jobs. Secondly, new cities come up along that route. Thirdly, you have industrial estates coming, so a lot of job creation takes place. So this is a very holistic view. The thinking of this started many years ago, and now it is progressing further. The port of Gwadar, which we talk about, was negotiated and built many years ago, and when I was in office. And we moved very fast with the Chinese government to move it. It is a small port at the moment. It needs to have better infrastructure, etc. But it will clearly give warm water access to a lot of Central Asia, China, and other parts of the world.
I think if anyone looks at the map, they can see the rationale for this, an enormous upside for China to get product into the Middle East and Europe. It's just unbelievable if you take a look at the seaborne route that is effectively chopped out by getting through the country. But what about security? I mean, it seems like a massive feat, and we've seen in other countries. I mean, Nigeria might be a good example even recently. You've had massive boom on the back of oil infrastructure, yet now you have factions of society who feel left out of that boom, and so you have militant type behavior. There are already significant challenges on security in Pakistan.
Yes.
How do you conquer that and ensure it's inclusive growth?
The security situation lately has improved quite a bit.
But from a very low base.
Yes, but what we need to do is, whenever you have empty bellies, people get more vulnerable and subject to extreme behavior. If you create economic activity, if you give them a reason to live, if you give them a better tomorrow than yesterday, people tend to be more peaceful. And we have seen over the years, in areas which have developed fast and economic growth is strong, extremism and terrorism reduces. It takes a while, but it reduces. So the plan of building this highways and the whole One Belt, One Road, a total of $46 billion, will really be a game changer for Pakistan. And what you will see is much more economic activity. The security part, naturally the Pakistan security apparatus is pretty good. The army and other paramilitary forces will be guarding this process. And once the cities come up, the infrastructure comes up, you'll have enough economic activity. Pakistanis, at the end of the day, are rational people. We may have a small groups of extreme people with extreme behavior, but I think this is a serious initiative. We will do all what it takes to provide security and to leverage this linkage between the warm waters of the Arabian Sea to all the way up to China.
So I just want to talk to you about geography. And when you look at where Pakistan is, you look to the west, you have Iran, Saudi, huge countries. To the east, India. To the northeast, China. Geography should be a blessing for Pakistan. But in many ways, people have called it a curse in many ways. Can it be a blessing? Can you tap into it? And I had this conversation in Davos a decade ago with the Pakistani delegation. And they were saying, look where we are. Look at the map. This should be absolutely fantastic for us. Can that happen?
Absolutely, it can happen, and it is happening. There's only one but, which is our relationship with our neighbor India. There, I think both sides have to work together to see that if there is peace between India and Pakistan, both countries will benefit. India cannot wish Pakistan away and Pakistan cannot wish India away. So what you need is leadership on both sides. Now, the best example of this was when we had a peace dialogue with India several years ago. Prime Minister Vajpayee and our government talked very seriously about coming to certain arrangements, which included even discussion of the Kashmir issue.
Sure.
And we had a process which resembled the Northern Ireland discussions. Actually, I can say that Britain played a major role. In fact, our people went to Northern Ireland, they studied how the whole thing was looked at.
If you build this rail project, then India is only going to be a bit player, because effectively the infrastructure will bypass India. So where are the benefits for India to come on board and have a better relationship with Pakistan?
No, the benefits, India has been actively involved in creating security challenges for Pakistan. Recently, we arrested a senior intelligence official in Pakistan trying to recruit people to create, and now he's in our custody and perhaps singing like a bird. Having said that, India also has to recognize, and that's what Prime Minister Vajpayee did at the time, that if we can live in peace, South Asia can be a different South Asia. It doesn't help India either if Pakistan has security challenges which they may or may not have something to do with. So I think if the whole region has better atmospherics, you will see growth. People are industrious, people have a will to work, they are smart, as we all know. We just need to live in peace with each other and get the economic dividends out to our people.
Let me just speak plainly for a moment here. There is at the moment an issue as far as the Islamabad-Washington relationship is concerned, and there are a couple of thorny points. One is the F-16 contract that Pakistan wants going to be honoured, and the other one is Washington going to acknowledge Pakistan's significance as a nuclear power? And all of this is mixed into what you're describing, and I'm sure what you address in your book. But my point is this. Pakistan continues to hit numbers over 100 on Transparency International's corruption index. Its people are among the poorest in the world, and yet there is a group of leaders in the country who are fixated on big power politics. Shouldn't these people stop trying to buy fighter jets in this rivalry with India and focus instead on lifting people out of poverty in the country and dealing with corruption?
Actually, first of all,
you as a former Prime Minister have been part of that process.
Let me say, first of all, poverty in Pakistan has been coming down. Economic growth has been positive. In our time, we doubled our GDP in 5 years. Tell me how many countries have done that. So the people have benefited from that, and that's what we want to continue, number one. Number two, India and Pakistan both have many domestic challenges, and they are, in my view, below potential in terms of economic growth. So what we need to do is get that going. The trust deficit between the two countries is such that it prevents the countries from coming together. That's why you need leadership, which I think both countries at this time can again try to do that. Now back to the F-16s you mentioned. F-16s are used to fight terrorism and extremism.
You do not fight terrorists with F-16s.
May I just explain to you? Allow me to explain to you, sir. All these F-16s, which the US knows very well, when we identify the camps in the hills of Pakistan and mountainous areas, it's only the F-16 which can get there. And if you look at the track record of the Pakistan Air Force sorties, you'll be amazed. The entire focus of these X-16 Cs and Ds, the models we have, is going after terrorists. Once we get the intelligence, and they know, the US knows this very well. But obviously there's a US Congress, there are US other factors which come in. But the F-16 sorties, I can send you details of all the sorties we've made in the last 6 months, and you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Well, let me beg to differ, and we can let that rest, because the Soviets didn't achieve dominance over the Mujahideen in Afghanistan using air power alone, and we've seen that Washington has failed to dominate the Syria story using air power alone. So you need people on the ground as well as air power. But
absolutely.
In this situation, the F-16 is being used as a pawn in the rivalry with India.
Not at all.
It's not about terrorism
The
per se.
F-16, first of all, is not the latest in terms of fighter jets. We have the infrastructure because we've had this plane for a long time. We have the maintenance capability. Today, if you went to buy a new plane, you probably wouldn't buy F-16s. We are only taking it because we have the infrastructure to maintain them and to fly them. You know, changing aircraft is very different than commercial planes. Fighter planes, your pilot gets used to a particular plane and they have to stick with it. So that's the real reason.
Will you be going back into politics in Pakistan anytime soon?
I've done my bit. I was never a politician. I was asked to come and fix a bankrupt economy, which we did. As I said earlier, we doubled our GDP in 5 years, and it's not just that. Structural reforms are key to economic growth across the world. And that's what we did in a very significant way, which we are benefiting the dividend. The reform dividend is coming even today.
Let me be, again, frank with you.
Please.
India has been re-rated by the markets. As a former banker, you understand the dynamics. India has been re-rated by the markets because in Modi, a leader has emerged who finally is offering solutions to domestic problems. He's not arrived on the stage saying we are going to muscle up against Pakistan. He's arrived on the stage saying we finally need to build things, get infrastructure sorted, start to invest in the economy. Should we not be hearing the same kind of messages coming out of Islamabad rather than, you know what, we're going to go and negotiate with the Chinese now over defense because we don't have the F-16s yet and we don't have what we feel we need in terms of the power balance with India?
First of all, let me say that the Pakistan-China relationship has nothing to do with India. We are the ones who took the US. Henry Kissinger came to Pakistan. We did the back channel with China. You probably are aware of that.
Yeah.
And we opened the relationships between the two countries. Yeah. Having close relationships doesn't mean that you're only buying military hardware. Pakistan and China are very, very close physically. And in terms of policy, outlook, etc. We want to live in peace with everybody, including India. But peace, remember, is achieved through strength, not weakness. We cannot have a country with no ability to protect itself when we've had 2 wars before with India. History will tell you that if you don't have strength, you will be overridden.
But the relationship with Washington is currently rocky. You'll acknowledge that.
It is,
and there is a feeling within the government in Islamabad that Washington has not been as fulsome with intelligence sharing, particularly when it comes to the terrorist threat from Afghanistan or on the Pakistani border. Is it, do you think, critical that that fence be mended before Islamabad starts getting more deeply involved with defense discussions with the Chinese? Because we clearly know what Washington's position is vis-a-vis Beijing.
We have to change our DNA a little bit. Our meaning, all of us, we are discussing this topic. Pakistan's relationship with China does not impact in any way our relationship with the United States. These are both great powers, P5 members. They have a global footprint and a global role. We want to be friendly with everybody. We have never said that in fact, United States and Pakistan have a pretty good relationship in many ways. The point is, when you look at South Asia will grow to its true potential. Today, South Asia, which runs from Bangladesh up to Afghanistan, including India and Pakistan, is below potential. Why? Because the countries within South Asia have not got the peace dividend which they deserve. United States and China are not the factors which
Sir, thank you so much for coming in and taking the questions this morning. Shaukat Aziz, former Prime Minister of Pakistan, and I guess your book will be available in most good bookshops.
Absolutely, all over the world.
All right, thank you.